Hey, everybody, and those coming on over from the Pete Thorne live stream. I'm Ben. Welcome to the Sunday Night Hang right here on the Ben Coombs YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you're new, and hi, welcome back if you're coming back. Tonight, I'm hanging out with my good buddy, and he's got like a computer chip in the back of his brain that has an inventory of pedals, guitars, amps, cables, everything. Inventory right there. A decent memory in spite of lifestyle choices that we both enjoy. Welcome, Dylan Washburn from Flipside Music, my friend.
Hey, everybody.
Sorry, welcome back.
Well, yeah, no, it's been a while though, but yeah, no, thanks for having me, Ben. It's always fun to chat. I feel like it actually has been a while since we caught up, so overdue for sure.
It was one of those, you know me, I just play this channel as far as booking guests. When somebody goes in my brain, I'm like, I was watching an FEQ as usual, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't had a chat with Dylan in a while. Reach out. And you're like, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's always good to catch up, and especially during these times, feel like it's going to take forever before we can get you out here this way, but hopefully whenever that happens, we can do this until then.
Yeah, exactly. And wow, we already got 33 people in the chat and more jumping in. So I'm going to do roll call. So, folks, if you want to get a shout out, you got a shout out. You don't have to use caps like Thomas Santiago, but you can. Anywho's, we've got, hey, Bumblebess. Great to see Bumblebess in here. Warlag, Brother James, JJ's House of Jams in the house. Awesome. Other left, Dale Boyle Music. Thomas Santiago. Yep. John Duchesne, Terry's 3Gs, Chris from Coburg, Dan of New Jersey, BC Rich 581, of course, Janice Lala, unfucking believable. Yep, I said it. We're 3 minutes in. Magic Man, thank you. He says, nice shirt. Eddie Van Haskell in the house. Paul Leonard Ewing. Great to see Paul in here. Vince RJ. Matthew Stewart. Did I say Magic Man? Magic Man. Mark Taft. I was hanging out with Mark yesterday. House of the Shoulder, buddy. We moved a bunch more heavy stuff yesterday. Yeah. Charles 75N. Yep. Perfect. Martin Lemaire. Paul McNary. Symmetry. Let's see. All the early rise. Tim Thomas. He was here early. JP Page 2. Billy Baloney. Nice. Tim Thomas. Yeah.
Sweet. Sounds like a lot of the usual game.
Scott Brockway. Yeah. Milt, Keith H., Brad Guitar Miller, Jason Lindholm. Yeah. And folks, I'm going to just say, if you're not already subbed to the Flipside Music YouTube channel, link down below. Check it out. You won't be disappointed. It's Dylan and Ike answering your questions on a weekly basis. And you try to stump them? Nope. You try to troll them? Nope. Legitimate answers either way. I love it.
It depends on how it hits, that's for sure. Because some days I don't know why we're in a more analytical setting, and then there's other days where Ike and I can't take anything serious. So you never know for sure how it's going to turn out.
I love it. I'm going to say it happens twice a year. You'll call me. You're like, didn't Ben ask this before? And Ike will be like, oh, it's good. It's the time of year. Like he'll try to. I'm like, I'm just high when I watch, and I don't.
Well, yeah. No, it's Yeah, I'm usually aware of why, but honestly, it's a good one because a lot of times, a lot of that stuff, I mean, it is what the fact, so it should be frequently answered questions as well. So
sure,
it doesn't hurt to kind of hit some of those things more than once.
Yeah, and different people are tuning in at different times.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing because Ike and I try to remind ourselves, a lot of people, it doesn't really matter when they tune in, but a lot of people might just be seeing you for the first time. So as long as you're kind of always in that mindset, it doesn't hurt to kind of go over things again.
Exactly. Hey, Blackjack Guitar, Terry Himes, L&M Guitar Corner, Late Night for Martin. He's in Austria.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nice.
Johnny Love, new name. Welcome. He says, what's your favorite amp and guitar that you own, Ben? Common question, I know, but I'm always interested. Well, as I say hello to Brother Aaron from Albus Band, I'm going to say my favorite guitar would have to be my 67 Telly, because it was my dad's. What's up, New York City Pizza Sucks? There it is there.
I didn't realize that one was that old. That's cool.
Yeah. Or as my dad calls it, his $300 guitar. Yeah, that's what it costs. Hey, there's Rob from Tesi Switch. Favorite amp? I'd probably say my Fender Blues Deluxe because I can put any kind of pedal through it, and it's just a neutral amp.
Yeah, Blues Deluxes are very underrated, especially for pedal platforms, because that's honestly been one of the main ones we'd use in the shop for the longest time. And Ike actually used to have a modded one that we had to basically had to have him take home because it sounded so good. People kept trying to buy it.
Right.
But it was one of those things too. Like, it's a very good neutral platform for pedals. So I think it's honestly better than the Hot Rod, although the Hot Rod, for whatever reason, gets more fanfare. So.
Unbelievable says he'd give me $250 for the guitar. Well, I get it. It's used. Yeah, so yeah, I get it. Brendan Buttcheeks B Squared himself asked favorite 3-string guitar. Well, that would be my Brendan Buttcheeks built cigar box guitar. I see what you did there.
It's pretty cool.
Yes. It's fun, especially with fuzz.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, honestly, anything with slide and fuzz is definitely up my alley. I got to get better at slide, but it's still fun.
Exactly. Yes. So if you guys have any questions or anything regarding any kind of gear, tonight's the night. I'm just saying, because I can say it because I've been trying to stump you for 2 years, Dylan. I'm just saying. Well, 3 years even.
Yeah. Now going into a 4th here soon.
Yeah, and now that you started doing some bloody research prior to shows, because I could tell, because it used to be, I'll have to check into that, is turned into, I checked into that, and turns out, blah, 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 blah. Like,
yeah, a lot of it,
do a quick Google or something. I don't know.
A lot of it is, kind of last minute, just because especially if it's something specific and new, because at this point we're getting so much stuff coming in that, like,
sure.
I'm not even always getting hands-on things. Like, because used to, literally, every single thing that came through the shop, Ike and I played, like, every single thing. So, I mean, back in, like, the early days, we almost literally could have done inventory from home just mentally. Because, like,
sure.
we were in it so much. But now we have so much stuff. It's just, it's impossible to do that these days. But yeah, I mean, some of that stuff, like the 5150 Iconic and some of that, like, we had some mishaps with some of the shipping. So it's like, people keep kind of asking me about that one, but we haven't really. I didn't even get to play the ones that we had because they were basically smashed upon arrival. So,
right,
yeah.
Couple of questions, hey, Driddle, Driddle asks, no one's gonna ask Dylan favorite axe and amp.
That's a good one. After all the years, my Black Explorer, which some of you guys have probably seen in some of the videos. That one's like my main one. It kind of lives in C standard these days. I used to go between kind of like C sharp and C with it, but most of the time it lives in C, and for whatever reason, that one's like always home base. And it was like the first like real guitar I got, so that one, has kind of a special. Like, I remember I ended up working this really weird in between when I was still in school, and I ended up working for the water district up in the mountains from like mid-December through like mid-January to pay for it. But it was like the best thing I've ever bought for sure in terms of guitars. And then amps, I'm kind of a stereo amp guy, so I guess if I had to choose between all of them right now, I have this weird. It was built by this guy in Alabama called Swampworks Amplifiers, but it's basically a clone of a high watt DR103. And for like pedal platforms, especially with the business, like, best amp I've ever had for trying to demo pedals or even just take them home and see, because it's just such a blank starting point that I always know exactly what the pedal's kind of bringing to the table rather than, having a lot of the amp kind of overshadowing what the pedal's doing.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
Yeah, if I had to choose, it'd be those two.
Nice.
And honestly, in general, I think more people, if you can, try to find like ways of playing high watts, whether they're clones or whatever they are. Because like, to me, that's like if you're into pedals and you're gonna have one amp for a pedal platform, that's a really good landing spot, at least for a lot of people. I think it's just not nearly as common. So
right. Unless it's a Canadian high watt, then you're getting into Marshall territory.
Yeah.
The infamous Canadian high watts.
Yeah, some of the the modded ones over the years too. Like the Pete Townsend and Jimmy Page style ones are all pretty cool too.
Yep. Nice. It looks like JJ's been in the recording studio. Nice. Looking forward to hearing that. And I think Aaron's wrapping up his latest EP in the studio. So
Nice.
It should be.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are kind of, at least, a lot of like our usual customers are kind of, rather than touring right now, they're just digging back into the studio. So I think a lot of people are just trying to put out albums until touring's a little more stable.
Right. Hey, Leo.
Especially right now, it's so confusing. I mean, I feel so bad. Like MJ that works with us, he's the one that does a lot of our editing, and he's been doing. Me and him have been doing more of those like recent pedal demos,
which are awesome, by the way.
Oh well, thanks, man. Yeah, we're trying to.
I can tell how much work goes into them because I was like, "Fuck, that's better than anything I'm doing." They're sweet.
Well, it's funny because like we're literally trying to do it within like a certain amount of time, because otherwise it's really hard to work it in with anything else, because
right,
the shop is basically so busy now that we can't, because we used to be able to get away with like trying to fit in stuff in between, like in between customers. We would work on things here and there, but like now it's literally there's days that we're not really even getting to like take a break to go to the restroom or or eat or anything, because it's literally just customers for the whole day.
right.
So MJ and I have basically been trying to do it where we take a 5-hour block each week and we try to do it and just keep it to that amount of time. And it's actually really hard to get, to basically compose the song, film the stuff, and edit the stuff within that time frame. But we're trying to get, somewhat of a rhythm to it so that we can try to get at least a little more consistent, because it seems like people are digging the consistency in terms of us putting out a little bit more, like one demo and then one FAQ a week seems to be helping the numbers a little bit. So we're hoping to kind of continue that. But I feel bad that the main thing I think I was starting to say before I was talking about MJ's, contributions right now is he was basically slated to do a North American and European tour, like coming up in February and March. And unfortunately, like with everything with COVID, the European leg of it basically got delayed. Luckily, it wasn't canceled, but so many of our customers are in the same spot where like they just can't tour. They can't rely on the tour. So they're just digging back in and going back into the studio.
Right. I get it. Yeah, things are shut down pretty good here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's it's obviously different everywhere right now, but it's just one of those things that musicians literally are going to be held down the longest in terms of trying to get back to normal with a lot of this, because at the end of the day, a lot of that's not prioritized, unfortunately. So
right. I saw, let's see, I got a bunch of stuff. Man, chat's flying tonight, guys. So I will get, repeat as you guys were doing there. I saw Jason Lindholm got a new Squire Classic 5 Esquire. Loves it.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, honestly, the Squire stuff these days is really tight. It's like, it's better than ever than, in terms of where they've been. So,
right. Michael B was asking if Flipside has a wiring harness for a Duo Jet.
That's a good question. I don't think we do, because we've really just started settling in with some of the Gretsch stuff. It's really only been like the last 6 months that we've even carried them. And it's funny because of the way things have been, we're basically just now getting like the tail end of our first order, because Ike ordered, I don't know, I want to say about a year ago. We've kind of been getting them trickling in, but a lot of the stuff like parts and pickups or anything like that, we haven't actually received any of those yet. So,
right. Unbelievable was asking, is there any gear you're looking forward to in 2022?
That's tough. I haven't really, I guess, seen a lot of what's on the radar right now. I'm still kind of processing some of the ones that came out last year. The SY200 is kind of the big one that I've been more interested in, just on a personal note anyway. So that one I'm just kind of waiting. They've been back ordered for quite a while, so I haven't actually been able to dig in with that one yet. But I don't know. A lot of the synth stuff's been kind of exploding, and just because of where some of the customers are at, I'm kind of moving a little more into that stuff just to at least have some competency with it.
I hear you. Hello, Jason sucks at guitar. Interesting name.
Oh,
so Dylan,
yeah, Jason, yeah, he's one of our regulars.
Okay. He says you're welcome to come play the Iconic at my place anytime.
I need to, because I like I said, I didn't get to plug in any of them. Like basically both of them ended up smashed upon arrival, and one of them was significantly less smashed, and it was smashed in a better area. So he ended up grabbing that one at a discount. So luckily, ended up working out for him. But I just never got to try that one quite yet. But Jason's one of our regulars, and he actually takes lessons with Greg Block. So I don't know if you've seen Greg. Greg's usually the guy that does some of our more like 80s themed stuff. So he'll do like some of the EVH demos and some of that stuff.
Yeah, hell of a player. And I've seen a few people mention in the chat, apparently Bob Saget passed away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, so it's Betty White, Bob Saget. So that means there's going to be a third one coming out.
Yeah, I tell you, every day I'm scared when I open up Twitter and I see my favorite guitar players' names trending, but it's just like iconic guitar players. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I know. Honestly, even if you just anybody's name that you see in any of that stuff, I'm always worried now if they're over a certain age that's going to be what it is.
Yeah. By the way, happy birthday, Jimmy Page.
Oh, wow, okay, that's cool.
That's why that was my scare of today.
Okay, that makes sense.
Let's see. Johnny Love asks, do you have soundproofing in your home, guys, so you can play at a good volume? This is something I would love. Oops, I skipped ahead because chat's flying. I turn up my amp when I see the neighbor go out. Dylan?
Right now, I mean, it's kind of the homemade version of it, more or less. But yeah, in the main music room where I've got my the big rig, we have a lot of fabric on the walls and stuff, so a lot of it's breaking up in that sense. And then there used to be a bunch of windows, and so I actually, well, not a bunch, but there was basically 2 windows that did face the neighbors, and so I ended up getting this soundproofing styrofoam. And I just did a whole bunch of layers, and I basically inserted that into the into the cutout for the window. And yeah, honestly, most of the time, luckily we don't have neighbors on one side, so most of the time I can get away with, as long as I keep it before 10 o'clock, I don't usually get in too much trouble. And actually, the one time that somebody did call the cops, luckily, I was playing with Jake and my buddy Connor, and we were just running through a bunch of Motorhead stuff, and the cops actually showed up, but they ended up being Motorhead fans, so it actually ended up working out. They were like, "Oh, you guys are perfectly fine in the sound ordinance and everything." So they actually went on the other side of the house and just kind of hung out and listened for the rest of it.
Wait, don't turn the camera. Hang on a second. I gotta get.
Oh, dear Lord.
That would be how he would end it.
Hey, Squid Jay, see you later.
Hey, Quinn.
That's a drive-by queuing.
Yep.
Only for our VIP guests.
Wouldn't expect any less.
Yeah. Yep. Corey, thank you very much. Dylan,
appreciate it though. Whenever anything bad happens in Colorado, Quentin calls the shop, so it is kind of funny. I appreciate it though, because it's I know obviously, the state has a lot going on sometimes, but it is funny. I appreciate anytime anything bad happens, he gives us a call.
Yep, that's true. That's true. Corey asks, Dylan, how is the progress on the new store opening? Is there a date set? Also, will all the pedals be on display like the current store? That is the coolest part of the store.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start with the second part of the question. The idea is actually to basically make the pedal wall one long wall now, so it'll actually be better, I think. We're going to still try to have some cabinets essentially in front of everything, and then still have the long pedal wall, but it'll basically be broken up over the length of an entire wall rather than having to kind of wrap around the corner like it currently does. Because I don't think, Ben, I don't know if you're able to get a sense of the way the shop's laid out, but essentially we have the main front area, and it's kind of basically cornered into the center, the main part of the front part of the shop. So it's basically just an L kind of curve for all the pedals right now. And it's honestly not the best because like a lot of people, especially if they have any, site issues, it ends up being really hard because not everybody can read them. So we're hoping to get everything pretty much the same, consistent level. So that should actually be getting better, hopefully. And then in terms of the first part of the question, unfortunately, we're kind of at the mercy of the building department and like the contractors and all that. So we're still waiting for like the permits to go through and all that. But as soon as we have like a firm date, obviously we'll try to let everybody know that we're hoping, if we can do it right, we're hoping to be closed for a very short amount of time in terms of doing the switch over because it's only like a mile from the shop, so we're hoping we can kind of do some of the loading in stages. So we're basically going to move some of the gear ahead of time, like the cases and like all the stuff that's not necessarily like the fast moving stuff.
Sure.
And then we're hoping to basically have the shop set up so that literally everything will, hit the doors and then immediately go right on the walls because, we don't really want to have a lot of downtime and we kind of want to settle in, and we actually have a bunch of plans to try to do some more. We have like an area that we'll be able to have more live shows and those types of things. So we're hoping if we can kind of hit the ground running, we can have some of our friends do some like live shows to kind of, kick off the new place and have some fun with it because we've been cramped up for so long. It's like it's just we're hoping to kind of shake loose a bit over there and finally relax because it's been kind of rough between the neighbors and just the amount of gear that we have right now. It's been kind of rough. So
sure. Yeah, well, shout out, we got Mitch Heyman in the house. For those who don't know, Mitch goes live every Tuesday. Don and Mitch show Tuesdays at what time is that at, Mitch? 8 Eastern, 9, 7, midnight? No, not midnight. What time is that on, Mitch? It's a great show. I lurk. Usually I'm doing my NASCAR podcast the same night, but it's not as long, so I'll catch a bit of him before or after when I'm doing work on that stuff. So it's cool. Nice. I did see another question here. Let's see. By the way, yeah, we got like 70 people watching. Oh, and Sidney Poitier was the third celebrity.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, he was a big one, unfortunately. Yeah.
Blackjack Guitar says 8 o'clock. Thank you. 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. Also, Zach Thong reporting in. He has no power. He's west of me. There was a power outage east of me earlier today, and I can hear the wind just a howling. So if I disappear, I'll try to get back on, even by cellular apparatus. Hello, Mike.
You end up struggling with that a bit where you're at, like in terms of weather interfering with what you're doing.
Yeah, every couple of months, you get a really good windstorm.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I used to live in Washington for quite a while, and especially like where my grandparents were at, like literally hurricane force winds every once in a while because they were like right off of the Puget Sound. So every once in a while, like literally it was like going back in time because we might lose power or lose internet for, a couple days at a time. So.
Mm-hmm. It's not too bad here. Fortunately, I'm on the same grid as the Walmart just down the road. And because they have a pharmacy, they have like total automatic. They're wired into several grids at least. So
okay.
Rarely do I lose power. I found that out. The next door neighbor let me know that. I was like, oh, that's sweet.
That's really good to know. Yeah.
Especially when you have a sump system in your basement and a lot of gear in your basement, that sump pump's very important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't have a generator, but the neighbor does. And he's like, yeah, just run a cord out. Because he saw when I was moving in, because when I moved in here, the first thing we moved in was all the gear. And he's like, musician? Or is a band moving in? Like, what's, because it was all this.
Yeah, Well, I was just saying, a lot of it, I always find like with the guitar case part of it, they either think it's rifles or guitars. It's always one or the other.
Yep. Yeah, and then the amps and the road cases. And
right. Yeah, those are a little easier to figure out.
It's like, it's like Spinal Tap moving in. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Hey, Deja Blue.
Yeah, it's funny, actually. Jason that asked the question earlier was in the shop. I think it was yesterday. It's all kind of blurring together now, but we had one of my buddies. He ended up bringing in like, I don't know, at least 12 consignment items, and most of them were like amps and guitars. And so it was enough to like put on a show. And was just kind of funny, like seeing the dude literally make like 8 trips to bring all the shit in.
Yeah. You kind of lose your bargaining power when you bring in that much stuff too. You can't really command top dollar for everything. You know, I'm just saying.
He was doing consignment, so
yeah. So
usually the check-in process takes forever, so that part of it's kind of hard. Yeah. But other than that, it's kind of nice because usually we end up stocking some stuff that we can't normally have. He was the one everybody's been kind of asking about that Marshall JMP that was on like Instagram, and he was one of the ones that brought in all that stuff. So some good stuff. Like it was an old Marshall JMP. I think that one was, I want to say it was early 70s. I might be wrong on the year on that one. And then a bunch of old PVs when they were still, USA built and all that stuff. So a bunch of good stuff.
What's up, Dave Ennis? Good to see you, my friend. Hobo Roadie says, speaking of tap, I just scored my 3rd Super Beetle. Expect loudness. Nice. I dig it. So, question for you. Thoughts on the relaunch of Maestro effects?
I think it's pretty solid. I mean, I think it's always pretty cool when some, usually at least if it's at least trying to stay faithful to what the original company was, I think it's kind of fun. But yeah, no, I think it's cool. I mean, so many people, associate them, especially now with YouTube. So many more people know, about the past of Maestro. So I think in that regard, it should be pretty. I would imagine it's going to be pretty successful, but you never know. I think the reissuing though, especially of like the phaser and any of those, those really classic ones, the envelope filter, any of those, that'll all be, I think everybody will love those. So. Well, no, I don't know. Do you know if they're doing the Brassmaster? Are they doing reissues of? I haven't looked into some of it. Are they doing reissues of like some of the real, like the like the OG fuzzes and all that?
I just saw, the only thing I saw was a teaser photo of a Maestro phaser, and it looked like an OG one. So like, I don't know if it's just a photo of an old one saying, "Hey, we're coming back," or are they going to build the large form factor style? And then maybe side by side with a smaller, more practical form factor.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be honestly cool if they could somehow make them look, or at least reference the classic shape, and then kind of do it, but more in a modern size, though. We have one of the Brassmasters, and it's kind of funny because just speaks to the time. But when you look in the inside of the chassis, it basically has a parts list and a diagram of the circuit, so that if you were ever like on the road and had to fix it, it's just funny to me. It's like, it's almost like the old kit car version of a pedal. So
and now everyone too will gloop a whole bunch of crap all over the circuit board to hide what the circuit is.
Yeah, and back then they're just like, if you're fine, go buy this shit and you'll be up and running again.
Stop in at any Radio Shack, get your replacement parts.
Right.
Deja Blue asks, what are your thoughts on the new Gibson the new Gibson under new leadership? Has enough time, enough change happened to afford them goodwill? I still see, I see less flaws in the finished product on the shelf, but they are the most susceptible, it seems, to have finished flaws that make it to market. Which that's part of the character of a Gibson. Expect to find a finished flaw 6 months after you purchased it, where you go, damn it, or the headstock will break at some point. These things happen. Yeah,
I was gonna say. At this point, almost any brand kind of falls into this, where like if you find the right guitar made on the right day by the right person, it can be amazing regardless of where it's made. But I think Gibson still does fall into that, like, because of the price point they're at, because of the history they have, people expect, basically perfection at this point. And so it's like, even if they're coming in a little under that, they're still going to be, most people are going to deem them, inferior at that point. It's just one of those things that I think they'll never really be able to outpace that. At the same time, I think the main thing they keep, I don't know. I think the main thing they keep messing up on, and honestly, it's something that I feel like Fender could even address, is like when you have a million different models and a million different tiers, and you have all these levels and striations to what you're trying to do in terms of production. I
Mhm.
think you just end up having more, you end up inviting more of those flaws, because if you have, people making more or less the same thing over and over, and they get to know it on a level that they'll never know if they're moving from one model to another day to day. And so I
Right.
think just parsing down the models, I think both Fender and Gibson, because they both talk about it, but they never actually like do it. They always like talk about like, oh, hey guys, we're gonna, Fender like 2 or 3 years ago kept insisting they were gonna cut down the line and cut it all down to very core models, and it's like, well, every year they'll
They will
add
be opposite.
new models, and it's like by the time it's all done, you have 6 variations of one thing, and so I think at
It's
that
like
point you're
Fender.
just inviting
I swear
flaws.
Fender keeps growing in spite of themselves, and I don't know what are they gonna be pompous enough to put robot tuners on a guitar? Like, because it almost seems that way, other than they want to have a Tele and a Strat available at every $200 increment, or every $100 increment up to 1,000, and then every 200 after that. I don't know. It seems they have, there's got to be 10 different Teles and 10 different Strats available at any given time now.
Right. Well, it's one of those things, and maybe, I mean, I tend to be kind of old, even for my age, I tend to be kind of old school about a lot of things. But I think on a consumer level, there's a lot of times where it would just be so much easier if there was 2 or 3 core models within a line, and that was it, because then you have firm delineations of like why you would want to upgrade from one model to the next model.
Yep.
When you have like 100 different tiers to each model, it becomes really hard to convince a customer like, yeah, this that you're buying is worth $200 or $300 more because you're getting this little thing or this little thing. It's like it doesn't add up, on like the salesman side of it doesn't add up, and on the consumer side of it doesn't add up. And so it's like I feel like at the end of the day it would be a lot easier if there were more just consistent lines with very core elements, so that people can kind of figure out that they're a standard Strat guy or a standard Tele guy, and if they want to go for the deluxe model, go for it, but you don't necessarily need to have 5 different steps to get to that point.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Yeah, and then it's like, especially with Gibson, it's like if they would really just strip it back down to like the core models and like just do those really, really well, I think that would honestly buy them more forgiveness in the long run than, because it's like that's what people have more or less been asking for quite a while now. And it's like I feel like they're always trying to guess where customers want to be, and at the end of the day, most people that play guitar, especially if you're going for a Gibson or a Fender, you're more of a nostalgic player. You're going for something that's a little more back in the past, not always like a hot new like Ferrari. You know what I mean? It's not usually that thing. So
I agree.
So it's like
I guess like Gibson's, I'd say they're being built better. Like let's say there's still finish flaws, but the build quality is better than they were a few years ago. I played a bunch of them and have enjoyed them. But yeah, now you got your Tribute, your Studio, your Classic, your Standard. Jesus.
Right. Well, and it's like then and then once you add on like the limited run models, it ends up being a whole other thing. And it's like those would be fun, and I feel like they would stand out quite a bit more if you didn't have 15 different versions of a Les Paul or 15 different versions of a Strat. It's like those one-off models would be way more interesting if you didn't have a million other ones to kind of
I'd rather have less models and then 6 different paint jobs of the same model as opposed to 6 different models with the same paint job.
Right. Well, and even like as a shop, coming from that side of it, it's like it would be far easier if you had some core models so that we could have like all of the colors, so that anybody who wants all any one of those colors isn't going to miss it. But it's like when you have 6 different versions of a Strat and each one has 3 to 4 different colors, it's like trying to stock that much, let alone display that much. It just like that part of it becomes not impossible, but it's just like it just from a physical space issue, it becomes an
it's almost like I swear Fender wants Fender dealers to be just strictly Fender dealers, but it's like it doesn't work that way.
Right. Because it's like a lot of times, even for a while, like I feel like G&L kind of does kind of stick more to the core models, and they don't really mess
Yep.
around with that too much. And it's like a lot of times I do wish that Fender would kind of take at least a little bit of a play out of that, because even their reps, like, every year the reps just get buried and stuff. And like, even when we get, we'll get like price updates or whatever it ends up being, and it's because they have so many models, they'll literally miss, out of a 19-page, list of products, they'll literally miss like 6 pages of different products that didn't get into it just because they have so many. And so it's like, I know that it's an issue for them, not just the consumers. So
yeah. And Rob from Tesi Switch was saying apparently Fender's run by some ex-Guitar Center guys, and that explain a fair amount. And with the Fenders creeping up their prices quicker than Gibsons are creeping up prices, it used to be, Gibsons are so much more money compared to buying American Strap, and it's like, are they? Like we're within $1,000 now.
Right. Well, and it was funny because a while back, like Nico and I, when he was still with us, I remember we ended up trying to run the math, adjusting for inflation in terms of like what, would a Strat or a Tele in terms of a standard model, would that be relative in terms of what people are making now to what it would have been, back in the day when you were buying stuff in the 60s or 70s.
Sure.
And a lot of times it was weird. Fender almost within like, $100 to $200 was usually within range. It was really Gibson that we noticed was like, well in excess of what it should have been if they were staying with the same, the same curve in terms of inflation and everything. And so it was just kind of funny because like with Fender now increasing those prices, I would say now they're probably not in that same spot because, bang for the buck, like just even like a year ago, the Pro 2s from them were just amazing for the price. But it's like, now they've gone through at least 2 changes since then, and I'm sure there's more coming up. So it's like at that point, the argument for that one being best in its class is going to be a little harder to pull.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it's literally you can walk in with X amount of dollars and you'll be able to put a Fender in their hand for that exact amount of money.
Right.
Because they're just boom, boom. So almost, like I guess if you break down like the price of new cars with the various options,
it's not vastly different. Or even we have a lot of customers that are more on like the bicycle side of things, and they go through similar things, especially in terms of product scarcity and shipping and all that right now. And it's interesting for them because they have the same issue right now, like because parts are at such a premium right now just because people can't get them or ship them quick enough. That they've ended up having like price increases, 2 or 3 different price increases over the course of a year. When, honestly, like when Ike and I first started, it was rare. I mean, we might get a price increase, I don't know, maybe once every 2 to 3 years from a company. Right. And that would be a lot. Like now it's not uncommon to get them every few months now just because of the way things have been. So.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Like Fenders, a Tele and a Strat would go up by $100, but it was $100 every 3 or 4 years. So you didn't even notice it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, these things are rather cheap. And then when they started going up $100 a year for the next 5 years, and I was like, I was expecting this because I'm like, why are they half the price of a Les Paul?
Right.
That wasn't making sense.
Well, yeah, for a while, Gibson was certainly, like I said, especially when we did some of the math on that, I would say Gibson at that point, at least when we were doing it then, had probably about a 20% premium on top of, like, if you adjusted for inflation, it was about 20% more than it should have been. Whereas like Fender was literally usually within a couple $100 of hitting that spot. And I don't know, I found that pretty interesting. But like I said, and you made the point, like with these price increases, especially as often as they've been, you can't really make that argument anymore. Because honestly, a big model that I feel like definitely illustrates that. Not specifically Fender, but like the EVH Frankie, the price increases on that, it literally went up, $500 or $600 in the last like year and a half. And it's like when we were getting those at first, we literally we wouldn't have it. Most of the time we would have them pre-sold before they even got to us. But even if we had one come in still in stock, it'd be gone.
That's a bit of a supply and demand, like, because with Eddie's passing too, demand increased even more, and with supplier, Fender saw it and they're like, jack up the price.
Well, they did that, but unfortunately, when they did that, it completely tanked sales on it. Like now, it literally
because when it came out, it was a lot of guitar for that price, and then all of a sudden it was like, that's a fair price, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, ow.
Right, yeah. So the closer it gets to 2, it's just it becomes harder and harder. Especially, honestly, the biggest thing that's holding that one back too is not having a case. Like that one, like it kind of kills us that it doesn't come with a case. So anybody that buys the one that we have right now is basically going to get a free case, just because, on principle, we feel like it should come with one.
Exactly.
But it's just one of those things that, like, they keep kind of doing those things, but they're not necessarily making it obvious for the customers as to why, like, what are you getting for these increases? You know what I mean? It's not necessarily equating for a lot of people right now. So.
Yeah. I don't think I think you should get a hard shell case on any guitar for over $1,000.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where we've been for a while. Like and it's just now it's getting to where you're very lucky to get one for anything even over $1,500, and even then there's no guarantee.
Even, I was gonna say maybe $1,500 should be the new barrier because of the price of wood. There's a lot of wood in a hard shell case.
True, yeah. Even
it might be cheaper to make a flight case, molded flight case these days than actual hard shell.
That's a good point. Yeah, actually, I didn't know that.
Huh. Yeah, I remember you used to be able to buy a hard shell, Les Paul case for $80. I doubt you can do that now.
No, I mean most, medium price for medium price for entry level cases is about 100 to 110. Yeah. And honestly, it's just going up from there. But that's one of those things, like, that's one part of it that sometimes I do wish some of the companies would maybe have a little bit better perspective on, in terms of where customers are at versus where they're at. Because it's like a lot of times when it doesn't come with a case, like I know it sounds dumb, but like that is a make or break deal for some people. And I think it's weird, but I get it. It's like, you want something to protect it to get it home. And it's like, it does feel weird, like sending guitars out without something, to put them in. It just feels weird. So, it's like I get the inclination, but at the same time, I know that they always look at the cases as like the very first thing they can cut when it comes to cutting prices. So
yeah, get my gig bag. All right. Yeah. Now it's like, it comes in a box.
Even then, it's so rare to even get that sometimes. So
it's probably because some bean counter went, do you know the percentage of guitar players that actually gig versus home players? Like, most guitar players actually only play at home. They don't need cases. It's like, yeah, but people still like have cases. You go over to a friend's place to jam.
Well, again, like even if just at a bare minimum, just to get it home, or go to your buddy's house or whatever it's going to be, like most people at least do something with it.
Yeah, you got to protect it some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Quentin says when he gigged, all his guitars were in hard cases. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, I mean, most people, like, especially gigging guys, like, they can't afford to fuck around with, it getting damaged. Like, it's just not an option. So, and I mean, we have a lot of customers that, like, if their main guitar goes down, like, that's, well, at least pre-COVID time when more guys were relying on gigging, it's like that was a severe hit to their income. So it's like most people, that are gigging guys definitely want a case, and they definitely want one that's not gonna fall apart just because you're taking it back and forth to practice.
Yeah I don't get it. Oh well. Let's see here. Bunch of people commenting on cases. Cool. Mike Jones, Les Paul cases were made in Canada for the longest time. I think Yorkville was doing it for a while. Same place they make the Yorkville cabs. They got plywood, they got Tolex, and that's where you could pretty much any Canadian music store you could pick up dirt cheap hard shell Les Paul cases because they made so many of them. They just put a different handle on, a cheaper handle on it, like molded plastic instead of that kind of leather handle.
Right.
And yeah, those were like $60 forever. Then they were $80, and now they're probably like $125, $150 Canadian, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, and that's just it's getting to be that I've always thought if it if it somehow equated out to roughly 10% of the value of the guitar, it would stay in line with it. But again, I mean, I know like most of those companies, that's the easiest first thing to cut. So in terms of their cost, so it's like I get it, but at the same time, like where consumers' perceptions of things are at and where the companies want them to be at are very rarely the same thing. So it's like I said, it's just in terms of trying to be that go-between a lot of times. It's like people are, especially people that play guitar, if they're anybody that's really looking for it, they're going to do a bit of research. And so it's like these days, it's not necessarily, it's not like the old days where you just have one or two things and that was pretty much it. And, you just kind of call it by what you saw. A lot of people are doing, a lot of prior research before coming in. So a lot of times trying to, like I said, again, pinpoint those things as to why it would be worth more. That's usually like the hardest part of trying to sell the stuff these days.
Yeah, it's true. It seems like everybody's an expert, whether they are or not, too. Because
that's kind of the thing. Yeah, like that. There is a certain level of a mentality going on with that, regardless of kind of whether they do or don't. But
yeah, it happens though. So yes. Yeah. Well, thank you, Terry, for posting the links in the chats, and Mayhem was doing it earlier as well. Thanks, guys. Various links, including the affiliate link to flipside-music.com. You can buy all kinds of cool stuff, and I get a little something.
Yeah, we're trying to hopefully do better with that. The online stuff overall, though, has been quite a bit better this year. I mean, we kind of made it through like roughly 2 years of goals within about a year time frame. So a big part of that. I mean, I feel bad saying it, but the whole COVID situation has actually been pretty good on, at least for us, on terms of sales. Just so many people having to kind of retreat into their homes, has definitely made it to where more people are getting a lot of that stuff. And it's definitely, there's a lot worse hobbies out there that are a lot more detrimental. So
exactly,
at least in that regard, it's not anything negative, but like I said, it does feel weird because there are so many businesses obviously that didn't really make it through this. So
that's true. Quentin's asking what the strap behind you is.
That one's kind of an oddball. That one, so it's basically a parts caster that a customer brought in, and it's kind of weird. Fender, for whatever reason, has not. Let's see. Oops, stuck on the stand. Fender, for whatever reason, has not issued the neck. So they're doing like roasted maple necks for like the Ventera series, essentially.
Right.
And for whatever reason, they're not like putting it on any guitars yet. So like you can order them through like the parts section, but it's not anything that they're actually distributing on a model yet. So essentially, it's the like Ventera modified like 60s neck, and then it's just on like a normal like placid blue body. But came in at such a good price, like I couldn't pass it up. So I actually ended up tuning this guy to C so that I could leave my other Strat in E flat.
Nice.
So kind of a one-off little, basically a 60s Strat with a roasted maple neck.
Awesome. BC Rich 581 says, looks like Ben finally bought Blackie from Clapton. Actually, no, that looks black on camera, but that's my pewter colored Strat. So it'd be like Clapton's 80s Strat.
Okay, that one's kind of cool. Yeah, it looks almost kind of like grayish.
Yeah. Always looks different on camera.
Oh, okay, yeah. Almost like a silver sparkle kind of.
Yeah.
Underneath.
Yeah.
That's cool.
89 US standard.
Nice.
That would be my $600 guitar, because they were $700 new at the time, and the guy had traded it in at the local music store, and Dad saw it in there because he was hanging out there, and he called me up and he's like, "Hey, this came in." I'm like, "I'm in Toronto." He's like, "I'm aware of that. I just called you." I said, "Tell him to put it behind the counter." All right. I said, "Does it play nice?" He's like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, all right. Tell him I'll pick it up when I get back. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's always cool when somebody finds something like that and it works out, especially if it's still there. So we have a lot of people that like will come in and they'll really like a guitar, but they might not necessarily be able to pull the trigger just yet. And sometimes I feel like they do kind of wait for the right person, because there's certain guitars like we can't always figure out why it won't move. But sure enough, somebody that checked it out like when it first came in that wasn't necessarily able to get it, they'll come back, and a lot of times they're able to get it.
Thomas.
So yeah, sometimes I feel like certain guitars are waiting for specific people.
Yeah. Well, that one, it was missing one of the tone knobs for some reason. Like, and other than that, yeah, I didn't care. Other than that, it was absolutely fine. I don't even think there was a scratch on it. And like I say, I think I got in the summer of 90. It was an 89.
Oh, okay.
So, it wasn't old at all. And I said, like I had some money, but I was on vacation, which was part of the problem. But fortunately, my parents, who I worked for at the time, they're like, well, we'll buy it and then garnish your wages. And I'm like,
oh, that's cool. Okay.
So I had like $50 a week taken out of my paycheck. Like, okay, done.
Yeah, that works. Can't beat that. Yep. Yeah, it's basically financed without having to really go through the paperwork.
Exactly. So yeah, and they knew I was good for it. And they, worst case, give me extra hours. I didn't care. Just pay it off.
What do you usually look for in a Strat in terms of necks? Because for me, it was kind of a weird. Like I just recently, like last few years, finally started bonding with Strats, but it was like a long time before I finally got comfortable with them.
I think it was kind of the original Player Series Strats.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is more or less that neck, because that was the first one. So I went, okay, which is similar. It's a little bit smaller than the 60s Tellys necks that I had first played. So
yeah, I was going to say, Ike has one from like 80. I think he said it was from 88, if I remember. I might be wrong. Honestly, he told me a bunch that I should remember, but he has one, and he actually doesn't play it that much, but it has a pretty skinny neck. And that's kind of why he doesn't play it so much. But it sounds amazing. It's weird. It's one of those guitars that like it sounds like a Strat all day, every day. But it just doesn't, he doesn't really play that as often. And it seems like a lot of the late 80s Strats that I've seen tend to have more of that skinny kind of neck.
Yeah, that one, it's not super skinny, but, actually, yeah, it's about the same as the Telly in width. And then it's just, a little less shoulder than a 60s neck. Because that's why I always get to take it. Like, most 60s reissue necks are smaller all the way around, like less shoulder and less depth than because I was like, I have 60s Tellys and those necks don't feel like that.
Yeah.
It's just like they went a little extra on the sanding. It's just everything is just that little bit smaller.
Yeah, just a little bit more rounded over too.
Yeah. Which is nothing wrong with it because it does feel that little bit better to me. So I was like, okay, that works.
Yeah, oddly enough, for me, like some of the chunkier Fender necks was where, like, in those, I guess just because they're less common, it took me longer to kind of find that out. But we ended up having this. It's actually pretty similar to that one. It's just more like the Daphne blue than Lake Placid blue. But it had like the 57 style, soft V neck, and for whatever reason, like I didn't know that would be like the neck for me, but. When it came to finally bonding with a Strat, that ended up being the perfect one. And that one's kind of similar. It's weird. It's basically like the same thickness, so it is kind of a chunker, but it's just rounded over. So instead of having the soft V, it's really just like a really fat kind of 60s style neck, which is a little weird because it sounds counterintuitive, but it is more or less just like a really chunky kind of 60s feeling neck.
I'll agree. There's something magical about those Fender V necks. I always hark back to it. Played a Telly at Carter's in Nashville, and I just all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god! Like I played Tellys, for 30 years, but this one just felt amazing, and it was kind of same condition, player grade, well worn, and all of a sudden play it, and it was a 57. I was like, that's what it is. I'm like, and I didn't know that it was a V-neck until people were telling me, and I'm like, that's what it was. Yes, because I was like, kind of feels like my Martin neck, but in a Telly, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know, like, for some reason, I feel like it just kind of fits in the joint, like, of the thumb a little bit better, and I think that's what it is, because it's like, it just, it ends up being the perfect thing, especially for me, like, a lot of skinnier Strat necks are kind of fatiguing, and me, for, like, having the soft V, it's just a lot less of that, like, kind of, the pinching kind of thing. It's more, you kind of have something to fill everything out, and so.
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it took forever for me to finally find one. But it,
yeah, exactly, my boy. The B's have less shoulder but fill the hand still. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those. Soft V-necks are just, I don't know, like one of those things. Like I never knew that's what I was missing the whole time.
Let's see. Sean Zimmerman's driving, but lurking while driving. Drive safe, my friend.
I do that quite often. That's usually why I can't always participate in the chat necessarily, but I can at least listen.
Right.
Yeah, because usually, actually, just because we end up, closing at 6, a lot of times you'll end up going on like right when I'm kind of on my way home.
Sure. Let's see here. JJ says, don't you think the recent lines of NAMM Charvels are pretty awesome? Bummer the prices jumped.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, I've been a huge fan of the necks on those. I ended up buying one of the Pro Mod Tellies. It's like the black kind of matte finished one with the Fishman set in it. And man, yeah, that thing, it's kind of funny. I mainly bought it to start doing more of the demos because it can do like 9 different pickup sounds pretty much just without really changing too much. And so I mainly bought it for that just because I wanted to cover a lot of ground. And it's one of the more like quiet guitars too, in terms of you can run a shit ton of gain and it doesn't get it doesn't start buzzing crazy at you like some of my other more like vintage themed guitars can. And so that one ended up, like the necks on those though, like if I'm ever having a bad day or just not like quite feeling it, like that neck, it's like a cheat or something. It makes you feel like you're like 10% better than you normally would be. So
yeah,
granted, though, I'm not usually like a medium jumbo fret person. That for whatever reason, a lot of the more vintage fret profile tended to work for me for whatever reason. But the necks on those, like it's on those Made in Mexico Charvels, they're so easy to play. And actually, kind of what you were talking about too, in terms of they are on the skinnier side, but because everything's rounded over, it's one of the most comfortable necks, especially for playing for like a really long time.
They feel very played in right out of the box.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they feel like they're and they settle in. Especially in Colorado, with we're so dry here that like a lot of the roasted maple stuff is very huge in this state because a lot of people just they move here and they get really sick of all the fret sprout. So
sure,
maples tend to be one of the most popular by far neck choices in this area.
See, Quentin's talking about his various videos in the chat. Yeah, they're always entertaining. There's another channel to check out, folks. Check out Quentin James. And he goes live quite often, too. He'll even play guitar on occasion. Just saying.
Yeah. And show you his ass randomly.
Or show you his ass, yeah. Yeah. Which he apparently apologized for. He says, I did not mean to show that much.
What? Oh, really? I thought that was very, it felt like placed. It felt very, like very on purpose, but that's that's funny if it wasn't. Honestly, that makes it even better. If that was all an accident, that's even better.
I think he meant to show a little, but not a lot.
Yeah. Just a teaser. Ended up being the full show.
He's going to have to start a OnlyFans now or something.
Yeah.
Let's see, John DeShane says the Pro 2 necks are great. Yeah. They are.
They are, yeah. Honestly, that's what like I was saying before. Well, even with the price increases, they're still, bang for the buck. Like that's one of those models you can actually point to and be like, yes, that one is worth going for. The Ultras, those are very much a specific player, I feel like, because the Ultras are fun, but they're just very different. So certain players really get along with them, but anybody that's expecting more of a classic Strat, I feel like the Pro 2 kind of hits more of that modern and vintage feel.
Let's see here. I'm trying to think of some pedal questions off the top of my head. I know I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago about the Double Rock.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to play one of those yet. We just haven't had one come through, but Yeah, one of my very first pedals was like a ZVEX box of rock, and it's funny because like oddly enough, we ended up selling it, or I traded it in when I first started working for the shop, and somebody bought it, and then I don't know, I think he sold it like to somebody else, and they sold it to somebody else, and then that person ended up trading it in, and Ike actually ended up liking it enough that he kept it, not realizing initially that it was my old one. And so it was just kind of funny, like literally after 2 or 3 years, that thing came back, and
Right.
so Ike's kept it this whole time. But yeah, that one's one of my all-time favorite. Just like, I don't know, it's a very warm, like if you're going for the Marshall tone, but you want something that's not just like the crisp mids. It's more that, kind of warm Marshall tone. Like that one was always one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Randy Crook asks, for both of you, if you were restricted to 3 pedals, what would they be?
Like 3 specific ones or three types? Well, I guess specific. May as well go specific. That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going with the 87 Deluxe.
Okay. Yeah. Good call. Yeah.
Because, there's a 2-in-1 right there.
Yeah. And that'll knock out most of any kind of preamp kind of section. So
I need some kind of modulation. I'm gonna go with my Boss CE2.
Oh, okay. That was a classic.
Yep. And then I'll need a delay, and I'll go with Lawrence's delay on that one. The offset delay. So it's digital delay because it's got a tone control. So as soon as you back off the tone control, it turns it basically into analog sounding anyways. So,
yeah, it does. It takes kind of that edge off of it that the digital delays tend to have. Yeah, kind of that crisp kind of edge to them.
Which I've discovered now, for the first time in my life, I'm playing something beyond a slapback, essentially, where I'm using half a dozen repeats and using the tone like, how many crisp repeats do I want? When do I want it to start deadening off? So I'm like, let's go for 3 crisp, and then it trails, off.
Yeah, I think that's like
love that.
The ultimate, well, for me at least, finding the delay, because it's different for every person, but like finding the delay that hits the spot in terms of something you can use pretty much all the time that doesn't get in your way. Like, to me, those are the delays that are really worth going for, because some delays can definitely overpower what you have going on, or they just clash. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, to me, if you can find the right one that gets out of its own way, essentially, those are usually the ones that stand out for me. I guess if I was going to do 3, that's tough. I'd have to have an amp that was doing some of the heavy lifting in terms of the gains part of it. So I guess I'd have to go with my Mesa on that one if I was going to move over, even though I said high watt earlier for the main amp. But pedal wise, the Demogorgon Deluxe, that one I can't, because like I said, that's probably the closest I'll ever get to sort of having like a signature pedal. So that one definitely would be my pick for fuzz and just for some of the stuff that I do. The modulation section, that's tough, because there's 2 that I use a lot. So I use the JHS Unicorn for more of the Univibe tone, and then I use the Earthquaker Devices or Grand Orbiter for phase. And I use both kind of equally, so that would actually be the hardest one for me to settle on.
Yeah, I was doing the coin toss phaser chorus.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'd be at with that. Like, I don't know. I feel like these days I'm probably using the Univibe a little more, or the Univibe sound a little more. So I guess I would probably go with that one if I had to choose between the 2. And then in terms of delay, because that would definitely be the other one I would choose. For the longest time, I had a really simple, you can actually see it behind like the little red one on the corner there. So that one's the Mr. Echo. That for the longest time, that I would have told you that'd be my number 1 delay. But I actually really love the Strymon Volante. And I was not really like a Strymon guy before I got that one. But that thing, like, just, I guess because it's not a lot of menu diving, it's all very tactile in terms of, how it all operates. I really love that one, because even though I have a lot of pedals, I tend to still stick towards a lot of the more analog or vintage themed stuff. And so for me, the Volante just hits that spot in terms of, vintage tape echoes. Like, that thing can basically do all of the 3 main ones that you would ever want. And so for me, that ended up being like the perfect delay.
Gretch Zeppelin says, need a tremolo so I can play some Link Ray. If you have a cool amp, it already has tremolo built in.
True.
Yeah. Make sure you have an amp with tremolo and reverb built in, so those are covered.
Yeah, if you're not going to, Link Ray, you definitely want one of the classic, more, Fender themed tremolos. But, honestly, too, like these days, it depends. I mean, a lot of people would probably argue against it, but the Walrus Audio Monument, I think, is a really good, because, like, you get both the regular, like, standard trem and you get the harmonic trem, and I think bang for the buck, that one ends up being I don't know. It's one of my personal favorites, even though I don't actually use that one. It's just, I think it hits all the right spots for a trem. So,
not only can I not remember the name of the one that I have, I don't even know where it is. Oh, that's nice. Oh, no, there it is. It was hiding.
The trouble of having a growing gear collection.
Yes. The Semimore Cavern bread.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, yes. I remember we had one of those like 3 or 4 years ago. That thing was actually pretty sweet.
Yeah, quite
versatile. More or less replaced it, but
yeah. And I'm told it's an OG one because it's horizontal instead of vertical.
It is, yeah. No, the one we had was the same. I think they more or less kind of replaced it with the Valcoder, which is also a pretty cool one. But another one actually that doesn't get maybe as much attention, but the Supro harmonic trem, like that thing, if you're gonna replace like an amp trem, that thing is amazing for what it is.
That is. And Muddy Waters, thanks, man. Welcome to membership and all of its privileges. And I will say, reminder to channel members, keep an eye on the community tab if you don't have the bell set to all, because that's how I post all the member videos. Links to them there. Just saying. There's a blooper video. That was the latest one, I think. Nope.
I'll have to check that one out.
Oh, only to channel members, though.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, basically various outtakes from demos throughout the year. I just put them all in at the year end, and it's just,
It's a good way to use it, yeah. Good way to use the old material.
I was shocked that there was like 7 or 8 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And that's edited down. I'm like, that's sad.
Yeah, I know it's hard to, it's especially with some of the videos, like that's why we started sort of kind of cutting out some of the talking, because for a while I felt like we were getting too, like once you start thinking about it too much, it becomes way too difficult. Because if a customer walks in and asks me about something, like I can tell you all day about it and not trip all over myself trying to explain it. But like as soon as you put me in front of a camera or a microphone and I got to explain it in a like precise, succinct way, like I don't know, for some reason I lose it sometimes. So it's one of those things. Even honestly, like it still happens. Like I swear I'll forget how to play guitar if like a customer comes in and asks me to demo something specific. And it's just funny because it's like all of a sudden when you're on the spot, like all of a sudden you'll forget, and it's weird because I've never done that like in a stage setting or anything. So it's kind of a funny dynamic in terms of being in a shop, I guess.
Quentin's asked about a half dozen times, so we should answer it. Does Dylan think we'll have the new NAMM in June/July?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're going to do it, but at the same time, with the way everything's been going, I'm not really holding my breath. It's like with the way everything's been getting canceled and, especially at least in the States, all the issues they're having right now with flights getting canceled because of staff shortages. It's like a lot of that stuff, unfortunately, seems to keep kind of compounding. So I don't really know if it's one of those things. Like it'd be cool.
It has to be in the midst of one of those ebbs or flows. It seems
exactly. Yeah, it's like I don't think anybody was banking on how contagious like this current variant was. So it's like if you had any plans last year, it's like a lot of them are kind of moot at this point because it's just everything's kind of getting shot out or pulled. The rug's getting pulled out from everybody. So. I hope it does, but at the same time, like I said, I wouldn't bet on it. It's just one of those. And even if it does happen, it could be one of those things where so many people are doing more of a virtual presence that, it kind of suffers just because so many people are expecting it not to work,
Nice. John DeShane just subbed to the Flipside channel. Nice.
Nice. Well, thanks, man. Yeah, we always appreciate that. It's like we got to be more consistent with it, but any little bit helps because it is quite a bit of work. Obviously, you know that it ends up. Especially a lot of those things are.
I was going to say since you monitor the questions, it seems now if he was to say start binge watching, you're going to still see the comments. Would you just then, if he throws a question on, would you tack it on to a new episode?
Yeah, most likely, because I mean at this point it's so infrequent. Yeah, I was just say it's so infrequent that anybody really does comment on the old ones that the notification usually would be. I mean, I know I've definitely missed ones because like a few of the guys have definitely given me some shit over the years in terms of letting a question slip through, and it's like it's not intentional. A lot of times it's just it's either a time constraint or just it slipped through the cracks kind of a thing. Because honestly too, like for a while, and I'm sure you've encountered it, YouTube like will change every once in a while the way that they kind of preload some of the videos when you're putting some of your info in, and for whatever reason for a while, like whenever you would go to check on like the status of a video, it would just show you all the comments, and then like now it basically just shows you the ones that you haven't responded to. And so like on the offset chance that Ike would have like talked to somebody on there or looked at some of the comments, I wouldn't always know. And so sometimes some of them will slip through that way because
if you heard a comment, even it'll remove it off.
A lot of times,
and it doesn't even show all comments, because I had one. Because I also I'll get emails of comments, email copies, and I was like, oh, that's a cool comment, and I wanted to reply to it, but it didn't show up. So I actually had to go to regular YouTube into my notifications. And then I found it that way, and I was just like,
it's weird. Like they kind of make you chase it down sometimes, and I don't always get it. But like I said, a lot of times, because Ike usually, for the most part, he really checks like the first day or two. So like if he's ever interacting with somebody, it's usually like the first day or two that it was posted. And so for like I said, for the first little while, I think I was missing certain ones because he would he'd either like it or whatever it was. And I would end up missing it just because it had been interacted with. So usually now, as long as I'm not in a hurry, I'll try to, zero it out basically and just go through all of them one by one. And honestly, sometimes too, I'll even just use some of the, even if it's a comment that's more of a commentary. Excuse me, beer's fighting back. But yeah, if I'm usually having a, more of a commentary question or not commentary question, but more of a comment rather than just a question, I'll still use it as kind of a jumping off point.
Sure. I've noticed that's because we were talking about that off air. Like I've noticed the 16-minute shows became 18 minutes, and then the ones that used to be about 20-21 are now 24-25. But it's all just great because you will take a comment and you'll take stuff that maybe generated a bunch of comments in the previous week thing. So you'll do a follow-up because it had generated say 4 comments regarding that certain topic. So you're just, and it looked like this. And I was like, cool. I dig this because that's what I love. But I'll have a question each week, which I love to do. And then it's usually, I'm working on a video when it's playing. So it's like a podcast for me. And just listen. I'm like, yep. And because I would remember the previous week and I was like, that's cool. Because it brings up that community side of things.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we're more or less using the FAQ as kind of a way to still kind of keep the conversation going with the guys that can't necessarily come see us every week.
Yeah, we can't loiter in the store, so we can loiter virtually in the store.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to be, though. More or less, is just because most any of the guys that come in the shop, they know like you can hang out. And like we'll literally shoot the shit for as long as we can. If it's not busy, obviously, if it gets busy, we have a harder time. But we try to keep it pretty relaxed. And we do have a lot of guys, luckily, that will come hang out. And they don't necessarily work for us, obviously, but they'll try to help out when they know we're getting slammed.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a great thing to have those guys. And so since you've been in that environment, obviously you know how those things go. Like when you feel like you're more included in the day-to-day life of a shop, it's a lot more fun. And so we kind of wanted to maintain that more or less with like the FAQ stuff so that people would sort of feel like they were kind of hanging out with us week to week at least. And like we Darrell, he puts a lot of comments in there. He's always he's got a bunch of different names, but he'll shoot by like on a lot of the weekends and bring like some kind of treat and coffee and some stuff. And so it's kind of the same thing though. Like we wanted to more or less have that just that sit down kind of hangout session.
Right. Yeah, that's what I used to do. I used to hang out every day in the music store, spend my lunch break, because delivering auto parts, I'd always hit a drive-through while delivering, so I never needed to take a lunch. Instead, I'd just hit the music store and play guitars for half an hour every day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we have a lot of, even some of we're right near one of the universities in town, so, every year there's at least one or two younger guys that come through and end up kind of, making it part of their lunch break or whatever it is. We had, one kid, he was actually at one of the high schools nearby. He used to come by pretty much every lunch break he had, and he literally at one point had made his way through like every single pedal in the shop. And so it was kind of funny because for a while, he was kind of like a third salesman because, it's like if I hadn't played something recently, he would have. So he would usually at least chime in if he felt like it was something he could kind of add to the conversation. So, But a lot of people, I don't know. I didn't have that as much as a teenager in terms of like a lot of the shops in town that we have here. They're just really not that. They're not that kind of place where you can go and hang out for a long time and just kind of feel like you're part of the shop. Where that was kind of the whole thing, like you mentioned, House of Guitars, like that was Ike's reference for like what a cool guitar shop could be. Where like the busier they got, the crazier it got, but the more included everybody felt too. Yeah. And that was kind of the whole thing with Flipside is like we literally just didn't have that kind of shop in Denver anywhere, at least that we felt. And so we kind of wanted to make the shop that we wanted to hang out at because we didn't have one. So, so yeah, at the end of the day, that really is like the the guiding line of what keeps Flipside going is like we want a cool shop that people still feel like they can come hang out at and feel at home and not feel like they're just some consumer that needs to get some shit and leave. Like we don't want people to ever feel like that.
Yeah, exactly. Scott Broccoli was asking if you guys carry dry bell pedals.
We don't. Every once in a while we have a couple come through to use, but yeah, I can't say. We're trying to always add companies, but at this point we're kind of at a spot where we it's like we got to kind of get rid of one to make room for one. And so we're trying to figure that out until we get in the new shop, because hopefully we should have a bit more a bit more space in terms of.
Yeah, I was going to say that I hope you're making the pedal area not only straighter but bigger.
Yes, yeah, we're hoping to go a little bit taller.
You hit 1,000 pedals in stock, you can't do 1,100.
Yeah, no, it's getting to be pretty pretty overwhelming, but at the same time we still. That's kind of the thing everybody knows us for is like literally we added 4 or 5 companies just in the last 2 to 3 months. So we're always trying to add different ones. It really ends up being one of those things that we try to make a tally of like how many people are asking about a certain brand, and once it reaches a certain point, that's when we really start considering it. And oddly enough, it's kind of funny. A lot of companies, now that we're a bit further than we were a few years ago, we actually have a lot more companies reaching out to us. So it's not necessarily always us trying to chase somebody down like it used to be. So it's kind of nice to finally be the one that's, getting pursued in terms of the other way around.
Exactly. Quentin's bragging about the socks that Ike sent him. He'll never forget that. Tone sock.
Hopefully he's not wearing them one at a time. But.
Let's see here. Yes. Any other questions? Get them on in, folks. We'll go for a bit more anyways. What we got here. Yeah. Hour 20 in. So actually, you just mentioned, a few new companies in the last few months. Who were the new companies that you brought on board?
Recently, we ended up bringing in Analog Alien.
Nice.
So, yeah, that ended up. I think the Rumble Seat's probably the main one. Most people might know that, or even the what is it? The Fuzz Bubble. That's kind of the other one that's making the rounds. We brought them in. We ended up getting Beatronics. So they're actually a really fun company if you're into fuzz. Like You know, they have like a just pure love for fuzz, but it's like they don't mind getting a little, you know, a little different with it, because at this point there are literally, you know, hundreds of companies trying to have a lot of overlap. So it's kind of fun when you do have a company like Beatronics where they're kind of just, you know, off the wall and not necessarily going for like the well-tread path at this point.
Right.
Who else did we end up bringing in? I'm trying to remember in terms of more recent pedal acquisitions. We did have a couple others. Oh, well, Frederick Effects, we kind of beefed up the selection on that recently. So we used to mainly stock. He does the Super Unpleasant Companion Fuzz, which is based on like the old Shanae Super Fuzz.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah.
that one, if you're gonna get a Shanae Super Fuzz, like that thing is amazing. Like if you know, for anybody that's into those. But we ended up kind of beefing up the selection on those. So we finally kind of have more of his whole kind of catalog rather than just like one pedal. Who else did we bring in? I'm trying to remember. Oh, one of our buddies, he's actually a local builder, PD Pedals. So he's actually kind of started to do, we used to just do like a handful of his, and he actually has, I think we have more than a dozen of his now.
Nice.
So he's actually been a pretty fun one that we've kind of like gotten to see him grow, and kind of, you know, as he's getting feedback from us and from some of our customers, he's kind of changing things as he goes along. And so it's kind of fun to see somebody kind of building from the ground up. And main thing he does, a lot of our guys tend to be treble booster and fuzz fans and a lot of that stuff. But he also does like weird like theremin fuzzes. He had this one where literally it had like a theremin rod on it, and like the closer you put your hand to it, like it would make different sounds. And he would make these vocal preamps out of old like Victorian looking like phones. So it would be like literally like some phone from, I don't know, you know, the 30s or 40s that was very meant to look kind of Victorian era. And he would literally put a tube preamp in it, and you would use like the main part of the phone as the vocal mic. So a lot of cool fun stuff from him. But yeah, outside of those, I know there's a few I'm probably forgetting right now, but those have been kind of the main ones recently.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yes, definitely a variety there, which again, with today's online world, if it starts directing people towards you because you're the folks that actually carry the product that they're searching for after seeing a demo on YouTube or something like that.
Well, yeah, that was one we started carrying that was new, and like the last 6 months was like 29 pedals, which I don't know if you were as familiar with. They did like these buffers and boosts that were, it was interesting. They're kind of more like the last little thing you would kind of add to a board, especially if you were like a stereo player. They ended up usually kind of leveling things out and kind of lifting the blanket off of, you know, if you had any kind of tone loss or anything in your board. And it was weird because at first we were, you know, slightly nervous to go in with them. But we actually ended up selling out of their stuff literally in about 2 hours.
Wow.
And so it was just kind of an interesting thing because we ordered a lot more after that happened. But they're one of those smaller companies that, you know, it's hard for them to really put a lot out. So even though we carry them, we haven't been able to carry them for a stretch because we actually ripped through the stock in a heartbeat. So.
Nice. Yeah, I found more than once. I browsed the website and I'm like, oh man, yeah, you can build some serious tone boards based off the inventory. Hey, Cushman.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. I mean, you know, in this day and age, especially with where a lot of people are at, it's a lot easier to have a pedal collection than like an amp collection. So we definitely, you know, cater more to the guys that are pedal platform amp guys that have, you know, pretty big pedal boards and are always kind of, you know, chasing the dragon at this point, because a lot of us, you know, your ears change or if something new comes out, and it's like it's kind of fun to always keep messing with that stuff. You know, we kind of equate it to almost like trading cards or something at this point. A lot of people use it like that, or at least they use like a running budget to kind of keep exploring things. And you know, to me too, it's one of those things like, you know, all the studio effects that you can get on a pedal board now are just incredible. So it's kind of like never been better in that regard.
Yeah, there's Lawrence, LPD Pedals himself.
Speaking of which, we actually got to do an order with him because we are getting critically low on his stuff right now.
And he's got quite the lineup now too, because he does the delay, the chorus, the reverbs.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome to see his growth over like the last, even just the last year, but even the
Mm-hmm.
last two. But yeah, like all the different additions over the last year have been awesome.
Yeah. Terry
Actually,
was.
really, I still keep meaning I got to buy a 74 from him because I really love the 87, but I think the 74 is still the winner for me. And I keep meaning to get one from him, but I just, I don't know, keep putting it off for whatever reason.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Terry asks, you recently got a Hughes and Kettner Black Spirit 200 floor model amp. Did you get a chance to check it out?
Was that, was he asking you that?
I guess so.
Okay. So I was going to say, yeah, I don't recall, let me see. Probably came in on my weekend, but let me see if we actually did. I don't recall using Kettner right off.
Yeah, we were joking. I was joking about
right.
that.
Yeah, we do actually have that guy. I can't say I got to try that one yet. Looks like it came in just a little while ago too. So yeah, I'll have to give that one a go. So sorry, Terry, no immediate feedback on that one.
Part of the next FAQ.
Yeah,
Random
yeah.
feedback on
So
this.
that's something to follow up on. So yeah, I'll definitely have to give that one a go. Yeah, looks like that
answering a question that wasn't asked on this channel.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll have to try to remember that one for the next one. I'll try to give you some feedback.
And we were, yes, Johnny Love, we were laughing about that in the chat. Unbelievable had asked Pete Thorne earlier today if he had heard of LPD Pedals. And he said, no, I haven't. I'm like, yeah, you have. I sent you my signature pedal. It's an LPD pedal. But he did. The chat was flying so fast he didn't see my comments. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think, yes, he's had so much gear around that he would forget. He'll get to it though. Apparently, he's gonna shoot a demo on it. So,
yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't blame anyone because, like, I used to. I mean, I still have I wouldn't. Well, I don't know. I would say it's borderline encyclopedic, but I don't usually like to boast at all. But these days, like, it really is hard for me to stay like on, even with just the amount of stuff we have coming through the shop. Like, it's really hard to stay 100% on track with all of them. So I can imagine with all these guys getting sent gear all the time for demos, it's probably a similar situation, especially if they're in the middle of working on something.
Mm-hmm. Corey's asking, any of the native audio pedals stand out to you? If you already talked about it, you can skip the question. I don't think we talked about native audio.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, yeah, that's actually, I should have remembered that was one of the newer ones we've had this year as well. I actually really love their reverb and they have a modulated delay. Both of those I ended up really loving. The reverb's pretty cool just because it's very simple to use, but it'll let you do several presets. So that one ends up being like a pretty solid option for people that want a little versatility, even though it's a more simple form factor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the modulated delay, that one I didn't expect to like, but it was one of those once I heard it in person. It's interesting because the chorus on it is actually pretty rich, so it's not one of those. Because a lot of times I always feel like you'll hear the repeat kind of wiggle on the backside, but you never really end up it never really ends up interacting with your actual playing as much. Whereas I felt like that one, it almost felt like a 50-50, almost like a parallel mix, I guess, if I had to kind of explain it. Like, rather than one hitting the other, it ended up being more of the two kind of in tandem. So
nice. Yes, George, I agree. Pete was pretty worn out and jet lagged. It was post gig, and he's still feeling jet lagged. So when he went live today, I get it.
Especially with him, I would think the 87 and the 74 would be right up his alley. So
yeah. John DeShane says he's looking for an ambient machine pedal. Any ideas?
Ambient machine. Well, kind of depends. I mean, there's a few ways you could go with that. I mean, honestly, one of the ones that's been steady ever since we've started stocking it, but the Mercury 7 from Maris. Like, if you want something that gets, pretty weird, very ambient, but also, still very usable, that one ends up being a pretty solid option. It's more in the octave reverb family, but It's one of the more interesting ones, especially if you can run anything. Like we have a few bass players that have picked it up, and when you hear like 2 sub-octave reverb, on a bass, it ends up rattling everything in the building. So those are kind of fun. Really depends, these days, like there's quite a few good combos out there that, that hit the spot. I mean, it just depends if you're more of like a digital or, well, even though there's a lot of overlap, the digital versus analog side of things still ends up being kind of a thing. But I actually still love the Disaster Transport Senior from Earthquaker in terms of just a very simple, 2 delays and a reverb tied together. Like I always thought that one was a great sounding one that, it's obviously been around for a while, but it's still, I still think it's a really great option for that stuff.
Eddie, yes, I did see that video. Sorry I didn't reply to you. The Yosh Schmengi bit, yes, quite funny. John says, yeah, for pads under his video stuff, I guess. So he's looking to do ambient stuff under his videos, perhaps?
Oh, okay. Honestly, actually, since we were bringing up LPD, the Cascade, I got to say, for like a plate reverb, I love that. Yeah, that is
I'm addicted to that.
Yeah.
Every time I sit down to jam, at some point, I'm doing infinite reverb. At some point,
it's so funny, like how many people we've like who just weren't even familiar with plate reverb that we've kind of turned on to plate reverb with that, because for the longest time, most people would replace, like if they're replacing their amp reverb, it's usually always something in the Spring family. But ever since we've had the Cascade, it's always like a really good one to kind of show someone that, like, there's more than one version of that, and you can get a little more ambient with it if you want to, but it's not like it's, wild and untamed reverb, because, something like the Afterneath from like Earthquaker, like that can borderline be too much. It's great for doing those long, never-ending trails, but it can also, be kind of an overwhelming thing that you can't necessarily put on everything. Whereas I felt like the Cascade, like you throw a fuzz or a hot preamp in front of it, and it like it all just kind of goes together, and it's like to me that's what I usually want with a reverb. So
exactly, I agree. And yes, Michael Krause, Chords of Orion, great channel for ambient guitar meditation. I discovered that channel years ago, long before I even got into YouTube.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, he's pretty wild. He's been doing demos and stuff for literally years. Yeah. Great.
Another one I would probably throw in that mix too, just for making pads. The Walrus R1 is actually really great for that, because it actually has an infinite hold switch on it, and it also has like an automatic swell feature. So if you're trying to do ambient swells with like unending reverbs, that one will do that like all day long. So,
ooh, that'd be fun. See you, Janice. Yeah, I might have checked that out myself. I'm getting into that. Ambient.
R1, I mean,
they got that Cascade. It just opened up doors.
Well, it's interesting too, because the plate reverb on the R1 is very similar to the Cascade. So it basically has like 6 different options in terms of the reverb types. Like you have a like spring, plate, hall. I think BFR, which is just big fucking reverb, which is pretty good. That one's basically like the stadium reverb. Nice. And then there's 2 like weird ones. One's called refract, and the other one is called air. So the refract setting is like one of those. It's kind of like some of like the Caroline effects, where you have like it's kind of like a lo-fi reverb where if like a little harmonic jumps out, the reverb will kind of grab it and just kind of run off with it. So that one ends up being a pretty cool one. But then the air setting, it's weird. I know it sounds weird, but it basically mimics the sound of like like wind going through the leaves, on trees. That's basically, it makes kind of that brushing noise. So that one's another great one, like for like those ambient tones where you just want kind of that unending pad that just kind of sweeps over everything.
Expect you to hear just a random bird calling in the background.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's funny too, because like, I grew up in the mountains, so it's like one of those things of like, it's very obviously it's peaceful to just go up there and hear like the wind blowing through the aspens, and it's just so funny to like actually hear that in a pedal. Like you just wouldn't expect to hear that sound. So it's the Walrus Audio, or I think somebody asked which one maybe, but the Walrus Audio R1 is it's basically part of the Mako series, which is like it's kind of their answer to some of the Strymon stuff in terms of, being a very small form factor, but you're able to do several presets with it. So
very cool.
Yeah. And honestly, the swell feature alone on that thing, is pretty cool because you can actually set presets that are just the automatic volume swell, and it's all threshold based. So if you lay into the string, it'll take a little, it'll happen a little quicker. If you're a little softer, it'll kind of sweep in.
Right.
It's one of those ones, like if you're doing those ambient passes, you basically don't even need a volume pedal anymore, just because of the way it'll gently kind of fade those in.
Nice. Let's see. Corey mentioned this as Dylan sold me a Ghost Echo, and it took me a while to appreciate it. But once I figured it out, it became a great pedal, or a pretty cool pedal.
Funny you mentioned that. Yeah, I've got my V1. I think it's that one on the corner there, just above the red one. But that's my V1 Ghost Echo, and that's one of those ones like I'll never get rid of. Like I don't know, the Ghost Echo is just. It's a perfect, like, always-on reverb. So I really like that one. It's not quite spring, and it's not quite, I don't know, something in between, but it's just one of those unique ones for sure.
Guitar Man 45 enjoys the Strymon Big Sky.
Yeah, that one's always solid. And the Night Sky is actually a pretty sweet one, too. That one I got to do a little more digging with because you can actually use that one as a synth in and of itself. So you can actually generate signals that will then go through the reverb signal on its own. So I actually haven't really experimented with that one yet, but we have a lot of like synth players that are starting to kind of come through the shop these days. So that one's kind of been a hot item lately.
All right, Mark, have a good night, man. Yeah, we'll go for a little while longer here, folks. So any last questions, get them on in now. We'll go for another 10 minutes or so.
Sweet.
Only because my hip is starting to get sore. New chair, same bad hip.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those things don't get fixed as too easy. So
yeah, getting old sucks, but hey, I had a good time so far.
Oh, that's what matters.
Yep. Greta Zeppelin says the Strymon Flint is good too. Yeah,
that one. That's another one. Like somebody I think was asking about trems earlier. If you're looking for like a 1-2 punch trem and reverb, that thing is very, very tough to beat. Like I said, it's weird because the Volante more or less sold me on the whole company because like we've carried Strymon for quite a while, but really MJ was really one of the only guys in the shop that really bonded with that company. And for me, a lot of it, and it's like I like the Big Sky and I like the Timeline, but at the end of the day, I'm also not necessarily a menu diver kind of guy. Like I'll deal with that for like my switching units and stuff, like the stuff that makes sense to me for that. But usually when I'm trying to dial something in, I prefer something that's a little more tactile. And so the Volante just ended up being that thing. But the Flint is one of those ones too. Like one of my favorite guitar players, Isaiah Mitchell from Earthless. He was the one that kind of sold me on that one because like when I hear him use it, like it does the Univibe thing, it does the 60s reverb thing. It does all of that, and it does it really, really well. So it's one of those 1-2 combo pedals that's just very tough to beat.
All right, we have Lawrence of LPD Pedals leaving, and we have Rude Tech Effects taking their place. Hey, Rude Tech Effects.
Yeah, good. Lawrence stopped in for a bit.
Probably still has to build a few more pedals before he gets sleep tonight. Okay.
Yeah, probably always doing that, I imagine.
Yep. Dan says, once you get accustomed to the Strymon menus, you fly through them. I'd imagine so.
Oh, yeah, no, it's one of those things like now that I've got way more experience, obviously, than I did. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I'm, I don't know. I just still like a lot of the tactile stuff. Just, I don't know. Like I said, it's weird. I'm kind of half old school, half modern, but I just end up falling in that line.
I had an HX Stomp for a year. I'm sure it's got lots of reverbs and ambient stuff that I could get into, but no, it's the Cascade that also I'm like, oh, sweet. There it is.
I mean, like sometimes, yeah, like a lot of those multi-effects, especially at the shop, we do have some of them, obviously, but a lot of times we end up having customers that like, it seems like a good option, but once they get into it, it doesn't necessarily, like they feel like they're chasing things more than they're actually playing. And it's like when you do hit that spot, that is usually when I feel like you kind of got to draw the line of like, yeah, it can be something that's cool, but if you feel like you're just messing with it more than you're actually playing, then maybe then having something that is a little simpler sometimes doesn't hurt. But.
Charles 75N asks, what piece of gear am I not buying that I really should? A tuner.
No. Yeah, that's pretty much for everybody. Honestly, big thing for me, at least over the last 2 years, like I knew it was going to be a good purchase, but I didn't know that I was going to love it as much as I have. But the Two Notes captor, like that thing, for at least for me, for like the last year and a half, I absolutely love that thing, and it's been.
I think that was the thing they had at the last NAMM show. Like all the pedal companies were plugged into one of those because don't they have a headphone out?
They do, yeah. They have an attenuator, headphone out. It's a load box, so you can actually record silently.
Yeah, it was like I swear that's what was in every single booth at NAMM. That everybody, like there was just no amps all at the last NAMM show.
Yeah, it's one of those things like because you can still get, and it still sounds like a good if you're plugging, your normal tube amp into it. You can get it sounds just like what your normal setup, especially once you dial everything in. But it's one of those things like the aux box from like Universal Audio. I think that one got more recognition kind of early on, and it's cool. But it's one of those things that's like it's dialed in and you can't really mess with it. So if you don't, like tweaking things, that can be that's definitely a good option. But the captor comes in at like half the price, and you can dial it in to sound pretty much just as good as the aux box. So it's one of those things like I said, I knew it was going to be a good purchase, but I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I have. Cause like for doing the demos the last few weeks or last few months, that thing's been like absolutely perfect. So,
Rude Tech Effects had mentioned the Mythos Oracle, which is finally out, I think. Finally.
Any of the Mythos stuff's solid. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember playing the Oracle at Summer NAMM 2019. He had debuted it, but it's not out. It's he kept refining, and then there's issues, and then but
I've always wondered about that because like a lot of those guys, a lot of them obviously some of them are engineer types, but a lot of them are also very artistic, and a lot of people that are artistic, like even when you release something, you're never 100% satisfied with it. So it's like I always wonder like how often they got to fight the urge to do like a new version of something.
That's why a lot of bands have to have someone else mix their albums. Otherwise, they'll never get finished.
Yeah, they'll just keep doing it and doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if Aaron's still in the chat or not. That was one of the first, that's what turned me on to Mythos was he's like, oh, Zach's got the Oracle there, boy. He's all going on about this Oracle. And I was like, all right, let's go check it out. Nice guy. Like Zach.
Yeah, no, anything I've heard from Mythos has been great. Yeah, I mean, we get every once in a while we get quite a few of those through used, and any of them I've ever heard have all been solid. So
yeah, awesome. Oh, Janice is back, and I was just about to get ready to wrap things up. So we'll go for a few more minutes because Janice is back. Can't have her just come back.
Funny. Janice is actually very, in an odd way, she's actually very influential on how some of our videos are getting done because for a while she was making comments that were helping me kind of narrow down like which font choice and like how long and what size it should all be. And so it's actually funny because now I pretty much whenever I'm doing any of the editing I always try to ask myself, is this something Janice will be able to read okay? Because I do have like issues with some of it myself because sometimes I'll do it on my screen and then like when I go watch it on like something at the shop it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't always translate the way that I think it should. And so a lot of times I'm always trying to make sure that it's like legible and that it's at least there long enough to really read because I know that's that's the hardest thing of like trying to guess how long people want to look at something,
It's funny. I gave up years ago trying to read. So like as soon as YouTube, I'd always just pause a video and then it's just like, all right, I'll just take the time to read it, even if it means it's going to be on screen longer because I've read it, type thing. Yeah. Fine, Well,
yeah, I try to make it because, like, especially the way we're trying to do some of the videos, I don't know, just generally speaking, because I feel like we're never going to dial in anything that's going to satisfy everybody, obviously.
Sure.
But we have, at least for the most part, we have an overwhelming number of people that say they want stuff that doesn't necessarily have a lot of talking. So we're sort of using the FAQ to kind of fill in that aspect of it. And then we're hoping, once we have a little bit more of like a studio setup at the new shop, we're hoping to do more of a setup to where we can do longer format videos and then that'll be accompanied with like a shorter format version of it, because we have some people that do want opinion portions of it, and then some people that just want to hear the product and that's it. So we're hoping to try to dial in both, but for right now, a lot of people tend to like more of that, let the text go by as the product is being demoed, so that way they're kind of getting a one-to-one, idea, like as they're reading something, they're hearing it. So it's like a lot of people tend to be telling us that's what they kind of like right now. So we're trying to do more of that. But it is, like I said, it is just funny with Janice, because for a while, like I said, she was helping me actually kind of narrow down like which fonts were best and like any of that stuff, because it's like I realized like it doesn't always look the same on my screen as it does on everybody else's.
Sure, exactly. We'll go for last question of the night from Randy Crooks. He asked for both of us, what do you guys know about Jet City amps designed by Soldano? Great amp.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you've got a lot of experience with them. I've had a few come through the shop, but
I played a couple of them. Richie owned one for a brief amount of time, which, funny enough, it came up for sale again recently, and he was thinking about buying it back, other than the fact he doesn't need it at all because he has a Marshall sitting there. But they're great amps.
Typically, I've always known them to actually be really good for anybody that's willing to get something a little bit cheaper and then have it modded, because we actually had a guy in town that used to do that with a lot of Jet City amps, and a lot of times that was not a bad option to go. You get it on the used market at almost half price, have Steve mod it, and by the time it was all said and done, it actually sounded pretty great. So because a lot of times, a lot of those companies, when they start getting to those price points, you start sacrificing like the transformers or certain components, and so even just like a small upgrade in that sense can usually go a long way. But any of the Jet Cities I've heard, once somebody kind of dials them in and gets it going through the right setup, usually they've all sounded pretty good to me. So
exactly. Well, there we are. So on that note, this has been an awesome hang, Dylan. Definitely we'll do it again, guaranteed, because why not?
Yeah, definitely.
Any parting words?
Not in particular. Like I said, I know everybody's kind of curious about where we're at with the shop. Main way to kind of stay up to date with that is just kind of hanging out with the FAQs, and we're trying to do more of the demos. We kind of took a break over the last 2 weeks just because of trying to do inventory and like hit the new year running and all that. But yeah, any kind of information about the new building is usually going to be referred through the either Instagram or YouTube. So anybody that wants to stay up to date with that, that's kind of how we're going to do it. And right now, like I know it's kind of a pain. I mean, it's something we want to be over there. We wanted to be in there yesterday, but it just hasn't happened quite yet. So that's the main thing I'm looking forward to, at least with the new year, is just once we get in there, like so many things are going to get better. So
very true.
And then, too, I do appreciate you having me on. Like I said, it's always good to catch up with you because like I said, it hasn't worked out to have you come down here yet. So hopefully, in the meantime, we can kind of keep doing this at least to catch up.
Exactly. Awesome, Johnny. Thanks for subscribing tonight. Appreciate it, my friend. And we'll definitely do it again. Always a pleasure, Dylan. So just hang on the line here, of course. Thanks, everybody that tuned in tonight. Wow, we had a great crowd in here tonight. Appreciate it. If you haven't already, please give this a thumbs up. If you're watching on replay, definitely leave a comment, even a simple hello. That's awesome. We always appreciate it. I'll be back on tomorrow night with Tom and Terry with Canucks Guitars live Q&A. Imagine that. Any news, Canadiana, all that fun stuff. I don't know. You have to tune in. Last week's show the 1 hour show went almost 2 hours. Yep. So there we are. Back next Sunday, I'll be here with Mr. Charles Green himself. He spent much of the 80s hanging out and working on the Sunset Strip. So we might talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got some stories then.
Yeah, I'm not saying he was a doorman at the whiskey, but amongst other jobs at different times. So that should be fun. So as always, folks, hold those doors open. Let that lady in ahead of you in traffic do good things, and good things will happen to you. Why? Doug's wife is real. Spent 2 weeks in a trailer with her. Yeah. So, yeah. Be good to each other. Happy tone chasing. And of course, don't litter.